Hello children, I welcome you all to our special English hour. Here we learn lots of new things and we also have fun while learning these things. Are you all ready? Let's get started. Children, you all know that it is very important for us to learn new words. So now let us all learn some new words. You will see these words in the lesson when we read it. So I request you to please make a note of these words in your notebooks. Icebergs, icebergs, icebergs. Antarctic icebergs are huge in size. Luxury, luxury, luxury. It is a luxury to own a car. Scrapped, scrapped, scrapped. He scrapped the idea of studying. Steer, steer, steer. He had to steer the ship. Tilt, tilt, tilt. I had to tilt my head to see what was ahead of me. So children, today we learned 5 new words. Let's revise them. Iceberg, tilt, scrap, steer, and luxury. I hope that you remember these words and I hope that you have made a note of these words in your notebooks. Children, let's read the lesson. The name of the lesson is The Unsinkable Ship. I request you to please open page number 92 of your textbook. Now I will be reading this lesson and I request you to point at the words as I read them. And if you don't have a textbook, listen to me carefully. On 10th April 1912, the largest luxury ship in the world set sail from Southampton in England to New York. She was called the Titanic. The word Titanic means huge. This was her maiden voyage, that is, her first voyage. She set out to cross the Atlantic Ocean. She carried more than 2,000 passengers. The Titanic was like a floating town. Everyone called the Titanic the finest ship in the world. Everyone was proud of her. She was as tall as a building with 15 stories. Inside, she was like a large hotel with grand staircases, dining rooms, shops, and swimming pools. Everyone thought that the Titanic could never sink. They called her the unsinkable ship. The ship's builders were so sure of this that they put only a few lifeboats on the ship. The unsinkable ship that I have been talking about is the Titanic. This ship had left from Southampton, which is in England, to America, and it carried thousands of people. There were 7 stories in the ship, which means it had 7 floors. So just imagine how massive this ship must have been. It had separate rooms like dining rooms and a lot of other rooms. This ship was so huge, looked like it was carrying a town. There were many builders who were involved in building of this ship, and after they had built the ship, these builders were so sure that this ship could never sink, which is why they did not put many lifeboats in the ship. The journey was very comfortable. The passengers were proud because they were traveling in the best ship in the world. They felt safe. Then came the night of 14 April. The sky was clear and the sea was calm. Many of the passengers were asleep. Captain Smith knew that there were icebergs nearby. So he told a man to keep a watch from the top of the ship. Suddenly, at 11:40 p.m., the man saw something. He grew cold with fear. A huge iceberg stood right in the path of the Titanic. "Iceberg!" he yelled. Captain Smith fought hard to steer the Titanic away from the iceberg. But the ship changed direction slowly and her side scraped the mountain of ice. A shower of ice fell on the decks and the iceberg cut holes along the ship's side. Water began to pour into the lower decks. Most passengers heard nothing and slept on. Children, all the passengers of the ship always felt safe because there were many facilities available on the ship. However, something happened on the night of 14th April, and after that night, things were not the same. The captain of the ship, Captain Smith, knew that there are many icebergs. So he appointed a man to stand on the deck. Now, what is an iceberg? An iceberg is a big mass of ice. It is very huge in size, and this mass of ice floats on water. So the man who was appointed to stand on the deck and observe found something. And when he saw it, he was very scared. He saw that there was a huge iceberg right in the middle of the sea. When he saw it, he started running, screaming, "Iceberg! Iceberg!" Now Captain Smith saw this and he tried very hard to steer the ship. Do you know what steer means? Steer means moving. So imagine that this is your ship and right in front of you is a huge mass of ice. So what Captain Smith was trying to do is turn the ship around. But the ship moved very slowly, and while it was taking its turn, it hit the iceberg, and the entire ship was showered with ice. Now water had started entering the ship. It started entering in the lower decks. Now decks are like layers. So water had started entering at the bottom layer of the ship. But this was happening late in the night. So most of the people were asleep. Captain Smith and his crew could not stop the water flooding through the ship. They knew the Titanic was in great danger. The unsinkable ship was sinking. At 12:15 a.m., Captain Smith sent urgent messages on the ship's radio, asking for help. Help! Titanic sinking! Come quickly! Then he ordered the crew to wake all the passengers up. A ship called the California was only 20 miles away, but she did not receive Titanic's messages. Her radio was turned off and the radio operator was asleep. Another ship called the Carpathia heard the Titanic's calls and sailed at full speed towards her. Unfortunately, the Carpathia was far away and she took over 3 hours to reach the Titanic. Now Captain Smith knew that the ship was in great danger. He and his crew knew that the unsinkable ship was sinking, which is why Captain Smith ordered his men to wake up all the passengers. He also sent help messages to other ships. Now there was one ship called the California, and it was also sailing along with Titanic. It was not very far from the Titanic, but they could not receive Captain Smith's messages, which is why they were not able to help the Titanic. Captain Smith had also sent a message to another ship. This ship was called Carpathia. Now this ship received the message and they hurried to help save Titanic. But they were very far from the Titanic and it took them 3 hours to reach where Titanic was. Meanwhile, the Titanic was sinking rapidly. The crew lowered the lifeboats into the sea, but there was only enough space in the boat for a few hundred passengers. The Titanic had more than 2,000 people on board. The ship began to tilt into the sea. People began to jump from the decks into the ice-cold water. With its lights still shining, the Titanic stood upright for a few minutes. Then, at 2:20 a.m. on 15th April, she vanished into the sea. About 1,500 people drowned. Captain Smith and most of his crew went down with the ship. The Titanic was sinking rapidly. The ship had tilted halfway into the water. The lifeboats were being used, but it could not accommodate many people. As I said, there were very few lifeboats and there were 2000 people, which is why some people started jumping directly into the sea and the water was ice cold. There was chaos everywhere. No one knew what to do or what to expect. The ship was trying to stand upright with its lights still on. But finally, at 2:20 a.m., the ship finally vanished into the sea. Do you know how many people did we lose? We lost more than 1,500 people. And amongst these people, there were also people like Captain Smith and his crew. None of them survived. The Carpathia arrived at 3:40 a.m. The ship's crew found the lifeboats and saved 700 people in them. They also found chairs and pieces of wood floating on the water. But almost all the people in the water had drowned or died of cold. The Carpathia was too late to save them. The sinking of the Titanic made people think harder about the safety of passengers on ships. They asked why ships carry such few lifeboats and why they turn off their radios. In 1913, it was decided that all ships must have enough room in their lifeboats to carry everyone on the board. It was also decided that ships must keep their radios working every hour of the day and night. At 3:30 a.m. in the morning, the ship Carpathia arrived and they had lifeboats with which they could save 700 passengers. But they also saw that there were many people in the water, 1,000 meters, which is 13,000 feet. Later, they took photographs of the wreck and brought small parts of it to the surface of the water. There are many stories of bravery on that terrible night in April 1912. In 1998, the director James Cameron made a famous film of the Titanic's maiden voyage. It is a very sad film, almost not have experienced, but the ending of the movie is very, very sad. This movie came in 1998. When I saw the movie, I was probably 5 years old and I did not understand much about it. But I saw the end and I will never forget its ending. I was very young, but when I saw the movie, I was also affected by it. For a very long time, I was scared of traveling in a boat. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and I hope that you learned something new from this lesson. Children, now it's homework time. For homework, I request you to tell your family members and friends about interesting facts that you learned in today's lesson. On that note, I would like to take your leave. I will see you all in our next session. Until then, take care and stay safe. Bye.